this then. And right now you should be able to see a screen that says risk management for 4-H.
Yep.
Is that up? Okay, good. Well, I'm going to switch screens, and we're going to start off with a bit of a quiz. So this is you should now see the worm assessment.
Yep.
Okay. So just keep track of the number of yeses that you have for all these. So think of your last major 4-H program that you did beyond the club meeting. And so you had a risk management plan documented for that program?
No.
Okay.
Well, we kind of do. I mean, we know we've got ways to contact everybody and all that. So, yeah, we do.
Okay. A first aid kit is available at all functions. Yep. A list of medically trained volunteers is on file for use for the 4-H activities.
I don't have a list. I pretty much know who they are. I don't know that everybody else does.
Okay. Current medical release forms are accessible for all members.
Yep.
So that'd be out at the activity.
Well, they're at the Grange.
Okay.
And we center it from there.
Okay. Accident incident forms are completed and filled with 24 hours of any mishap.
We haven't had any.
Okay. Our program has an emergency action plan for major activities.
Yes.
Volunteers are trained in risk management and are aware of the emergency action plan.
Probably not.
Okay. Volunteers, let's see.
That's the same question.
It is the same question. Activity rules are posted and reviewed with all participants.
They're not posted. We talk about them as we start.
And then our program is fully covered by accident and liability insurance.
Yes.
Okay. So they call this the worm infestation, the worm quiz. So you count the number of yeses, and then you check your level of worm infestation or worminess. So
I probably get to call in the birds.
Okay. This came out of Minnesota, out of their 4-H shooting sports program. So it's just kind of a fun way to look at risk assessment and using these kind of expectations for program planning. So I'm going to shift back to the presentation part. So you should see risk management for 4-H.
Yep.
Okay. So risk management is really talking about the uncertainty that happens whenever we do any activities with 4-H. And risk is those kinds of things that can actually have a negative impact on the organization's ability to complete our mission, which is really kind of focusing on education for kids. So it's mainly the unexpected things that can happen that can go wrong, and they can happen to participants, they can happen to spectators, they can happen to properties, and they can also happen to the reputation of your 4-H club, of the extension office, and the university. And so risk management is important because it's really, first of all, ensuring the safety of all the youth that are involved and adult program participants. But it also, risk management helps us to evaluate the potential risk and then to come up with plans on how we can lessen that risk or avoid that risk. So for every educational activity that we do, especially if they're outside the traditional club meetings, we need to make sure that we're doing a risk analysis, that we're actually having a written plan, doing those things that we have listed on the worm assessment, and making sure that we've got a plan in place. And the whole idea is that the plan doesn't have to be always done by the core leader, that it is really kind of an opportunity, especially where you've got older youth, to be involved in the risk management planning and help them to understand that risk management is really part of that educational process of planning. So when we look at risk, we've got some choices, some decisions to make. So one thing that we can do is to reduce the risk. So we can change the activity of the conditions to decrease the likelihood that a loss will occur. We can avoid the risk, so don't conduct that activity, but do something else that has less risk associated with it. We can transfer the risk, which means basically we hire somebody to do that part of the project which is risky. So something like river rafting, where you actually go to a guide service and contract with them, as opposed to putting the risk on volunteers who may or may not have the training to accomplish that task. Or we can assume the risk, basically accept the risk and prepare for the possibilities of loss, and communicate that information to all those that need to know, so that if we're going ahead with a risky activity, that the parents are aware, that the youth are aware, that the extension office is aware, and then many times then it also requires the state office to be involved. And especially one of the areas that come to mind is in the realm of camping or any of the challenge or adventure, that there is a certain amount of risk, but there's also required plans that are written plans that are required to be in place all the way up to the state level that help to set the guidelines, as well as document that everything has been done to keep kids safe, and that there's guidelines that are in place. So unfortunately, Kathy, that none of this is new to you. It's just that it gets, from time to time, we just got to go through and remind folks of the risk. Yep. And the expectations. And so the special areas that we consider around risk management are the emergency procedures, of course, dealing with money, the chaperones and background checks, any of the overnight programs and multi-overnight programs such as camp, medical information, medical treatment, and then volunteer transportation, and then things like notification and making sure that the intent to participate in special activities is communicated with the local extension office. So emergency procedures, just a simplified way to look at the emergency procedures. First, realize that even with planning for risk, that emergencies still happen. And in case of emergency, the first priority, of course, is to provide the appropriate medical attention to the injured participants. And make sure you call 911. It's amazing how many times an accident will happen and it's severe enough that 911 needs to be called, when the key person who would give those kind of suggestions or orders to folks to call 911 is so wrapped up in treating the victim that, and everyone else kind of helps with that they forget to make the call to 911, or they assume that somebody else has made that call. But making sure that you call the police or ambulance as appropriate, and making sure that if you need to leave the scene, that it's a secured scene. And then a responsible adult should stay at the scene, making sure that all the kids that are not involved in the accident are safe and out of harm's way, and ideally away from where the treatment's being done to the injured person. The second thing is to contact the parent or guardian and then to contact the extension office and get us into the loop right away. After the situation stabilized, then making sure that writing down the facts, and then we help folks with the accident incident reports. And then the biggest thing is don't attempt to do this alone. Make sure that you've got capable folks with you for each of the events, and then don't hesitate to involve us at the extension office to help through any of the processes. So chaperones, of course, the background checks, and then a ratio of 1 adult chaperone for 10 youth is recommended as the minimum. And the dependent on activity, there should never be just 1 adult. It should always be a minimum of 2, and especially for overnight activities. And so even here in the office, we always try, where we're doing a youth activities, that we have at least 2 adults who are involved with the activity. Because again, part of it is you never know if we're going to need to take care of a youth who may be injured or upset, and that still leaves another adult to be involved. And then chaperones should be at least 21 years of age. And then recommended, of course, that that adults adults and young people stay in different rooms when possible, and unless it's of course family members. And then the finances piece, and Kathy, I know your club does a good job with this, but that money raised in the name of 4-H has to be handled through an approved financial account, and that only clubs that have EIN numbers are allowed to use the 4-H name and logo to raise any funds, and the funds have to be used for 4-H youth educational programs. So I always tell folks, you have questions about the money stuff, that's one of those things you really need to ask the questions.
What we've been spending our money on the last couple of years is this rifle program, or the shooting sports training that our leaders are having to go. Isn't that perfectly appropriate? Yeah,
that is, yeah. Yeah, because it's furthering the youth education, and it's probably the only way that those folks are going to wind up getting training.
Yeah, and we're also, like when Ty went to KYG, we helped him.
Yep.
That sort of thing is what we're doing with it, and we buy fair decorations, and that's about all we use it for.
Yeah, and then the other thing is making sure that the kids are involved in the decisions on where the money is spent.
It's always done by motions at the meeting.
Yep. And then those minutes should then go with the treasurer to basically back up those expenditures.
Oh, okay. The treasurer should have a copy of minutes.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, because Casey has all those. I'll be sure she starts making copies.
Yep. The overnight 4-H experiences, so those would be camps or field trips. They should involve some extra planning. If it goes more than 2 nights, even though it's within the club, then the camp standards for 4-H camps come into effect. And so even if it's a camping, backpacking kind of trip, if it goes more than 2 nights, then the camp standards apply, which basically the 2 big ones are waterfront activities, and then also somebody with medical background, EMT or better, and then any water activities are going to require trained lifeguards to be present. So we're working on a backcountry certification for folks, so they won't have to have complete lifeguard training, but they will need to have this backcountry guard training. And so in June, I'll be off to California for 3 days of training so that I can come back here and train folks. Because up till now, our requirements have required full lifeguard certification for anybody who's going to be involved in any kind of water activities. So this new certification will help with some of the backcountry activities.
Will it help with your log rolling?
Yeah, it will. It has potential to help there as well. Yeah, I'm actually a certified lifeguard, so I did that to make sure that
I knew you did, yeah.
I would be compliant. So the other things with camping and overnight programs, fire escapes, emergency numbers, emergency medical procedures, also severe storm and fire, other natural disasters, planning for that, missing persons, and then what's becoming more increasing at camps and campgrounds would be unidentified person that come into a facility or a camp, and having those kind of plans in place. And then transportation, the kind of the idea that 4-H leaders are not chauffeurs, and that it is really kind of the responsibility of the participants for most transportation. And there's some guidance for age of folks who might be driving, and then recommendations on not to use 12 or 15 passenger vans for transporting youth, just because of the rollover potential of those and just the safety factors. So if folks have questions about transportation, talk to us early before the activity. And then all of our 4-H youth development activities are educational. So part of the educational process is identifying risk and then managing that risk. And so safety is no accident. And the 4-H policies are really in place to protect the volunteers, the safety of youth, and then the reputation of the 4-H club, the county office, and the university. And so the 4-H policies are on the 4-H website, and those are, right now we're still finalizing the latest updates to the 4-H policies, and those should probably be out in the fall. And
that's the state policies?
Those are the state policies, yes. And there are some changes, especially with code of conducts, and then there'll be changes in dealing with conflict and some better procedures in place. So look for those to come. So that's the quick.
Okay.
So any questions or things you can think of that we might have missed in the previous?
Well, the thing we have coming up next is the parade in Elk.
Okay.
And our group always has a float, and the horse people generally ride their horses.
Okay. So my recommendation is just do a quick kind of risk assessment plan with the group. You've been doing it for a while, so you know the kinds of things you're going to come into play.
Oh yeah, we've been in it for over 20 years.
Yeah. And I can't tell you how many times I've had to treat folks who have fallen off floats.
Oh yes.
So that's one of the things.
We try to have them sitting down on a bale of hay.
Yeah. So that's one of the things, making sure that the procedures are in place. And then the recommendation is that, kind of have the officers come up with a quick sheet of, here's our policies and procedures if you're riding on the float, if you're riding a horse in the parade, here's what you need to do. Making sure that only 4-Hers are on the float would be one of the things I'd recommend.
Yeah, the only time we have any extras is if a parent is there, and like Mandy will have her little one,
Yeah.
and Mandy's with her.
Yeah. And, so to be completely covered, that may be an event, buy the 30 cents per person event insurance for that day.
Well, like I say, that's the only extras we would have would be like Aubrey and Kim and Tony's little ones.
Yeah.
And they would be on there with them.
Okay.
They wouldn't be on there without their parents.
Yeah. It's still the recommendation that it would only be 4-H members on the float. I mean, I understand the circumstance, but the coverage that you guys buy will not cover adults who are not registered, or will not cover additional additional folks that are there.
Yeah.
So that's really and I know you've done a good job of trying to get all the adult parents to be registered as volunteers. Doesn't mean that they've got to take an active role in a project, but just for the liability coverage and then the workman's comp,
yes,
they need to be registered, and then they need to record their hours.
Yeah, I know, and I've been doing mine. I haven't yet for April, but I've been doing them. Yeah. But I know that not very many people are.
Because that's the only tool that I have.
I know.
To protect them from a whole series of.
Well, and our club knows it. I mean, we've talked about it before, and we had an experience. It was not at a club meeting. It was at a fair cleanup. Melissa Talent.
Yep.
Her ladder slipped out from under her.
Yeah.
And she broke her wrist. And it took some juggling to make sure she wasn't old enough to be a leader, but she was too old to be a member. She was like 19, 20.
She could still be a member, yeah.
Well, no, she was past it. She graduated out.
Okay.
But she was up there helping. And it was... The fair finally picked it up as that she was there as a volunteer that day.
Yeah.
But at that time, they didn't have us signing in. Now they have people sign in at the lunch line, which doesn't catch everyone because not everybody stays for lunch.
Right.
But it makes a better attempt.
Yeah. The other thing with fair is that for 4-Hers, for that overnight kind of club kind of camping at the fair. Technically, everybody who's over 16 years of age who's not registered as a youth or volunteer needs to go through a background check. And that's especially coming to light with the near abductions that have happened at 2 fairs in Washington this last year.
Yeah.
So if one of the things I'm going to be, and it'll be in the news and views, but talking about the need to get background checks on folks who are going to be spending the night in the campground as part of 4-H. So we can do a background check very quickly even there at the fair.
I was going to say, I think probably we only have 3 or 4 parents that would fall into that category. And I don't know whether they plan. Now, Melody Turner's family probably plans on staying there. I think they're going to bring some animals. But other than that, I don't know who as parents would be planning to stay there that weren't already leaders.
Yeah, yeah. So
like Mandy and JJ, Jesse and Mark Bonzer and that crew that always stay, they're pretty well already covered.
Yeah. Just if there's any, aunties or uncles that are staying, we probably need to do the background check. And
the only one would be Kim or Wilson. Sometimes her sister comes, but she's a teacher, so it would be pretty easy, and her husband's a game warden.
Yeah.
So they're.
Yeah. And we still need to run a background check. I mean, if we know that they're there, then we need to run a background check.
Yeah, I don't know if they're going to be. Some years they are there for fair to help Kim and Tony.
Sure.
Something about running 4 kids, they get a little behind.
Yeah. And then the other thing that I need to remind, not you necessarily, but everybody, is that any contracts, I can't even sign a contract.
Yeah, we don't sign contracts.
Yeah. So
no, there's one thing that's coming up that might. We've got a member who's also a scout, and his Eagle Scout project fell apart with the storm last summer. He was going to work in a cemetery, and they had to spend all their money on getting trees out of the way. He was thinking about doing, his dad and I have talked about it. I have not talked to Evan yet to see if he wanted to do the picnic table project.
Okay.
One for your office and a bench to take to the fair for Mark to sit on.
Okay.
So we might be getting into a contract there because it's an Eagle Scout project.
Yeah, and if just run it by me, and I can run it through if we need to. So.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Well, sounds like your phone is ringing. I'll let you go.
Okay. Okay. Good night.